Welcome to the Psychedelic Couch. Before we dive into today's discussion, we remind our listeners that using illicit drugs carries significant risks and legal consequences. Psychedelic substances like LSD, psilocybin mushrooms, MDMA, and DMT are illegal in many countries, including the UK, and their possession or use can lead to legal penalties. Psychedelics can have profound effects on mental and physical health. While some report positive experiences, others may face negative effects like anxiety and psychosis. These substances can also interact unpredictably with medications and underlying conditions. Approach psychedelics with caution and responsibility. This podcast shares information, not encouragement or advocacy for illegal use. If you or someone you know struggles with substance abuse, seek help from healthcare professionals or local support services. In this episode, I sit down with Cesar Marin, a former CNN journalist turned advocate for microdosing and plant medicine. At 55, Cesar began microdosing psilocybin mushrooms for personal growth and to overcome issues around addiction. He explains the science and protocols behind microdosing, highlighting its ability to create new neural pathways, increase emotional clarity and creativity. Cesar stresses the importance of education, intention, and responsible use, and discusses his initiatives including Microdosing Over 50 and his apparel brand Cultivating Wisdom. His story showcases the transformative power of psychedelics to inspire reinvention and connection at any age. I do hope you enjoy. So, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing amazing. I couldn't be better, Claire. I honestly say that every day is the best day of my life. For two reasons. One, because the ones back there, they're gone. Those aren't coming back. Those are just faint memories, just tapes that I can decide to play or replay if I want to. And the ones in front of me, those are just fantasies, right? They really don't exist. So today is the best day of my life. So if I wake up in the morning with that sense of clarity, everything else then is vibrates in the right direction.
Absolutely. And hearing you say that, I feel that vibration in my body too, because the only thing we have is right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And it's so funny, Claire, how a lot of people lose sight of that sometimes, right? We're thinking in the past, if I would have done this, if I would have done that, if, if whatever, if of. And then sometimes those thoughts of the future, right? What's going to happen in 2 weeks? What's going to happen in a month? What's going to happen right now? If you really concentrate on what's going on right now and lose sight of what's right now, then, and I tell people once in a while, take a second and 60. Just take a second and look around and go, you know what? I have everything I need at this very moment. And when you do that at right now, yeah, things you get a little bit of a smile, you see things differently. So it's a lot of perspective.
Absolutely. And noticing what you feel in your body in that moment, because a lot of the time it's an avoidance of the trigger of the discomfort that we feel in our body that we're trying to move away from, but actually sitting with that and sitting for yourself in that space and really being curious about that can be so powerful to bring you back into the moment.
It's so true. It's sort of it's about feeling your emotions. There's nothing wrong with feeling your emotions. There's nothing. It's also how you process them, right? How you sort of analyze them, how you become that consciousness, of why am I feeling this way? Feel it definitely. You know what I mean? Don't not feel it. And that's a problem that a lot of humans have, right? We sort of mask our feelings or we mask, that fear or whatever we have, and instead of being vulnerable and talking about them. So it's you're right. It's very important to sort of feel what we're feeling, express them, and then in that sense, sort of once we process it, then I think we lead a little bit with a bigger smile on our face.
Yeah, definitely. So, Caesar, I wonder if we could kick off with you just
Yeah.
telling us a little bit about you. Tell us about your story. How did you end up in the microdosing space? I know you were a journalist and editor at CNN for over 20 years. Like, tell us a bit about you.
Yo, thank you so much, Claire, for letting me share my story. That's amazing, and thank you for again inviting me to your podcast. I love what you're doing. These conversations around plant medicine, around psychedelics, around alternative healing, around awakeness are so important, especially right now, especially at this moment. So again, thank you so much for inviting me and letting me share my story. And not that my story is any more unique than anyone else's story, but it is my story. And each one of us has these unique stories. And when it has to do with psychedelics, plant medicine, Some of them are incredibly fascinating. Um, I was a journalist for 25 years. I was a producer at CNN. I did start to produce in news. Worked in news for a while, then ended up working in sports. So I was fortunate enough not have to deal with that fake news thing that was sort of attached to CNN, unfortunately. So I got to work in sports, which was incredibly nice. But and made a career of it. And about 2 years ago, I had found myself in that, you know, rat race, hamster wheel, doldrum of how much longer does this happen? When am I going to retire? I just become that 50-year-old, just going through life, right? I was happy, I had what I needed, but there wasn't a spark, there wasn't anything there. And it was funny because at the time I was dealing with a really bad cannabis dependency. And cannabis used with intentions, I think, can be a really wonderful, powerful plant medicine, but it can also, like anything, without intentions, not you having the power over it, it can be a bad situation. So at the time, I was dealing with that. And mushrooms started to come into my space, right? Someone close to me has an experience on the 4th of July, and they were like, man, it was incredible. My kids who an hour before I wanted to kill them, now I wanted to hug them. My husband was just, I felt so lucky. So mushrooms sort of started speaking to me, and out of a recreational curiosity, I stepped into the psychedelic world. I hadn't had a psychedelic experience before the age of 55. And it was out of that recreational curiosity that a lot of things opened up. I realized that there was this thing called microdosing, that people were using a small amount of psychedelics to overcome dependency. And I said, well, maybe that's the way I can help with that cannabis dependency. It also sparked a lot of intuitiveness, creativity, empathy, and my most authentic self. And as I then start to realize that I was going to get laid off from CNN, CNN had been bought by Discovery, and the writing was on the wall. I figured in my first psilocybin journey, the medicine pretty much told me, they said, you realize you're going to be a number on a spreadsheet, right? You're going to be come up on an office. They're going to look at a spreadsheet. They're going to say number 67. How long has he been here? 25 years. How much is he making? No, we got it. Sorry. He's a great guy. Everybody loves him. The security guards even know when his birthday is, but sorry, he's got to go. He's got to go. It's just a number. It's a business. So I knew that was going to happen. And with the microdosing, I was like, what am I going to do next? What do I do? And it was funny, Claire, because as I start to share my story with people at CNN, I went from, hiding my plant medicine cannabis use at CNN to proclaiming I'm using mushrooms. I'm microdosing. And people are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, seriously, I'm microdosing mushrooms. And they're like, are you right? Like right now, I'm like, yeah. I go, do I look high? They're like, no, your shows are amazing. I go, do I look like I'm tripping? No, you really look like you're here in the moment amazingly. And I was like, that's what it's about. So I started to talk to people about this. And there was a moment where I said, I want to wear a shirt. I want to wear something that says that I'm using psychedelics, that I'm using mushrooms, that, so I can talk to people, because it just became this conversation piece. Look, I was able to overcome a cannabis dependency. I was able to sort of, have this vision. And the sense of everything that was out there was very trippy, was very tie-dye, was very psychedelic-ish. And Claire, I said, honestly, look, if a guy like me with these gray hairs starts talking to you about psychedelics with some tie-dye shirt on, what are most people going to say? Listen, hippie, listen, stoner. Why don't you go listen to your Grateful Dead 8-track tapes and come back from the woods when you're not high, and maybe we can have an adult conversation. So that's when I said, you know what? I want to create an apparel brand that has apparel that's like this, microdosing, right? So what does this do? This starts conversations, Claire. Someone says, you microdose? Yes, I do. I've heard about that. Someone says, oh, you microdose? So do I. What are you microdosing? Oh, I'm microdosing psilocybin. Really? I started microdosing LSD, and it's totally different, and it's amazing, and it's incredible. Oh, and you have a reliable source that I can get this? Oh, amazing. Now, obviously, Claire, that being said, I'm not advocating that anyone does anything illegal, right? I'm just sharing my story and how these medicines changed my life, because I think that we really have to preface all these conversations by that, right? It's sort of, people's lives have changed, but you have to educate yourself, and you have to, and I think that for me was the the biggest key component to microdosing was my being able to educate myself. Like I didn't just say, okay, you know what, let me do some psychedelics. You know, I said, let me really dig deep into what this microdosing is and let me do some research and let me do, where are there studies and what are people saying? And, are there Reddit channels that we can sort of look into? And then to make a really long story short, that's how microdosing came into my life. I ended up, yes, getting laid off from CNN. I created the apparel brand so people can have these conversations. And then in all of this, I realized that there was this bridge that needed to be built between people stigmatized that psychedelics were bad, they were horrible, they wouldn't kill you, or who had that one bad experience because they didn't know. They just put their hand in a bag of mushrooms and ate a bunch of mushrooms. Once I started to share my experience and what I was doing more on social media, I realized that a lot of people who looked like me, a lot of people with gray hair, a lot of people who had lost their jobs, a lot of people in their 50s were reaching out to me saying, "What is this microdosing thing?" And I realized that, there needed to be some information. There needed to be a platform for people over 50 to get honest, open, and objective information about microdosing and about psychedelics. And that's when I decided to create microdosingover50.com so that we can have this place for people to come and get, like I said, that honest, open information about microdosing and psychedelics. So it's been a wild 2 years. It's been exactly 2 years since psychedelics and microdosing came into my life, and it's been beautiful, Claire. It's been such a wonderful ride.
Amazing. I mean, I wondered whether you could maybe share some of the education that you've learned over that time, and just tell listeners who maybe don't know much about microdosing. I'm noticing in my practice
Yes.
as a psychotherapist, I'm increasingly having colleagues ask me, clients ask about it, about protocols. Maybe you could share a little bit, and maybe the age piece. Whether or not we're over 50, in our 40s. I mean, I'm assuming that this information is relevant to all of us as opposed to just, what you're doing with the over 50s. It applies to everyone, right?
Correct. So, what is microdosing, right? Microdosing in sense, because I hear some people, oh yeah, I microdose once in a while, I have a little mushrooms. Yeah, that is taking a microdose of a substance, but to really harness and really encompass the benefits of the practice of microdosing, you have to be on a regimen. It has to be a regimented schedule, just so over time the neuroplasticity, starts to grow. You have more brain connections, and that takes some time, right? So, what is microdosing? Microdosing, in a sense, is taking a very small amount, a tenth or a 20th of a therapeutic or a recreational dose of a psychoactive substance, be it psilocybin, which is found in mushrooms, LSD. Some people are microdosing ayahuasca. Some people are microdosing mescaline. There's studies now being done with people microdosing iboga. So there's different substances that people are microdosing. So the idea is that it's a small amount, enough that it's subperceptual, so you don't feel anything, right? You don't feel like, oh, you know what, I'm feeling a little bit buzzy or I'm feeling a bit high. No, the sense is that you don't feel anything. So it's subperceptual or subintoxication, right? Level where the idea is that it's not what you're feeling, but what you're doing, right? This sense of clarity. I tell people ask me, so what is it that I should do? What is it that how do I know microdosing is working for me? I go, well, microdosing is if like you have your glasses, right, and they're all smudgy, right? And that's regular life. And then you take them with the best thing you have to be able to clean them. And then you put them on, that's microdosing. It's not something I felt. It's something, things are crisper. Life is crisper. My feelings are crisper. And yes, those feelings might be feelings of sadness or feelings of whatever. That's okay. The sense is that, if we operate at 7, right, that microdosing can take us to that 7.5, 8, possible 9, right, where we're in that flow. So the idea, like I said, small amount. You shouldn't be feeling anything. If you're microdosing and you're feeling something, then that means that either you have a high threshold, which means you should bring down your dosage, or maybe you should change the days, right? Which, Claire, what you talked about, protocol. There's different protocols out there. The most commonly used protocol is the Fadiman protocol, which was based on Dr. James Fadiman's study, where he did citizen science. Dr. Fadiman is considered the godfather of microdosing. And with the citizen science that he did, people were reporting to him that the best sense they got was this 1 day on, 2 days off protocol, right? It's a dosage day, right? Sort of you're in the medicine, you're feeling amazing, life is beautiful, things are crisper. That second day is a transition day, transitioning out of the medicine, right? That third day is an integration day, right? You're integrating back into without having the medicine. You, when that person cuts you off in the highway, are you going to sit there and blow on the horn and tell them to go F themselves? Or are you going to take a deep breath and go, you know what? Life is okay. So the Fadiman protocol is a wonderful, wonderful protocol. That's the protocol that I started on. That's the protocol that I recommend. It's easy to manage and sort of figure out where you're going. There's other protocols like the Stamets protocol. Paul Stamets calls for 4 days on, 3 days off. There's the intuitive protocol, right? Where people they use a little bit more intuition. You know what? I got this project that I'm working on. I'm going to, intuitively microdose. If people are microdosing LSD, there's different protocols for that. So the idea is that that education in yourself is incredibly important, right? Like I say, don't microdose because Caesar's microdosing, right? Don't microdose because Clare had a podcast about microdosing. Like, let that be what pokes at your childhood curiosity, and then go educate yourself. Get a book, listen to more podcasts, do some research. That's what's important if you're going to start to microdose, because not everybody's protocol is going to work for everyone. Not everyone's dosage is going to work for everyone. So that's why the importance of, and you'll hear this term a lot with people who are at the forefront of the study of microdosing. It's like this citizen science. What works for you? Do some science, right? Start off low and do that for a week. Maybe the next week, go up a little bit more in milligrams of what you're dosing. Play around with protocols. Here's a great gentleman who I was working with, and we started with him doing 1 day on, 2 days off. And he said, Caesar, it's like the first day I'm really in tune. The second day I'm there. He has it's a really high deadline. Like every day it's 2, 3 deadlines, just really high paced. And he says, like, but that third day, it's like again, like it's like the deadlines are there. And I said, well, let's change it up a little bit. Why don't we go 4 days on, 3 days off? And he said, okay. So we started on that protocol. 4 weeks later, he calls me and he goes, Caesar, I got called into my boss's office. And I went, what happened? He goes, they want to know how my productivity went up 15% in the last month.
Wow.
And he said, I'm just more focused. The deadline, the idea of the deadline doesn't even exist anymore. That's not even a thought. The only thoughts I have is what I need to do to make sure that the deadline is not a thought, right? So for him, the 1 day on, 2 days off, it was there. It opened it up. He sort of saw it, but there was something where it just didn't click. When he went to the 4 days on, 3 days off, that's where he really found his, his flow state, right? He found his afterglow. He found that perfect rhythm for himself. So, with microdosing, definitely do some education. If you can find a guide, a spotter, I like to call myself more a spotter than a guide, right? I'm not going to climb the mountain for you, right? But I'll give you some guidance. I'll give you some tools besides the microdosing that can help you get to where you want to be or where you hope you can be. So it's a really powerful tool when used intentionally, when used with some integration, right? It's sort of, what are you learning from your microdosing? How are you feeling? How are you acting? I think is really important. That's where journaling also is a big part of a successful microdosing practice. And it doesn't have to be, book. It's just, a couple of things. In the morning, what are your intentions? At the end of the day, what was the high and what was the low? And then keep track of your dosage, how much and what days. But it's definitely a tool that when used correctly can have a lot of benefits. The problem is when people say, oh, I heard that Billy's microdosing. I'm gonna go get some capsules and let me start today. And then, okay, but what I don't feel it. What yeah. That's sometimes where the issue is.
So with explaining to people about intention setting and integration, how does that differ depending on the protocol, or is it an ongoing journey? Would you suggest that people are journaling and constantly thinking about intention integration as a daily practice, or if they were doing the Fadiman protocol, would they have an intention the day before, have the dosing day, and then be journaling about the integration on day 2, and 3. How do you structure that, and how does it depend on the protocol?
Yeah, for me, what worked best for me was that daily journaling because it was that accountability. And that journaling became part intention because it's what my intentions were the day, right? It was almost like I was giving the medicine a roadmap of what I want. Hey, my intentions today are to go into the supermarket and say good morning to as many people as I can. Right? My intentions today are to finish that project that maybe I should have finished yesterday, but I was procrastinating a little bit. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to have intentions on a daily basis. It's what we're, and people are really great about is, they have a calendar and everything is already set, but those are your life. What are your other intentions? What are your intentions to be yourself a better person? So that's really important. And the integration also comes from, again, that journaling at the end of the day. What was the high? What was the low? What can I learn from what went on? And it's a great example of that was a woman I worked with. She came to me like 3 weeks later and she's like, Cesar, what, like, I'm not feeling anything. Like, I don't know. I don't just sort of, what am I supposed to be feeling? Like, what am I supposed to be feeling? And I said, let's go back to your journal, right? Let's find a day that high for the day. Like you wrote a little bit more than normal. There was something about that day. And she went back and she went, wait a minute. There was this day where this coworker of mine who I can't stand, like, I can't even stand the way she breathes. She came to me with a situation and I took it like it was, she said, I took a deep breath before talking to her. And instead of coming it with her with, friction, I came at her with love. And she said the conversation completely changed. And we realized we had a whole bunch of things in common. And now we're going to have lunch. And I was like, you see, it wasn't about what you were feeling. It was about what you were doing. So that journaling is an incredible part of that integration
Mm.
because it goes back to what am I doing? What can I do? You know what? When you write that high and that low, right? Wow, that low was really bad. I really should not have acted that way. Well, then integrate the fact tomorrow that you're not going to act that way anymore, right? That maybe the next time you'll think about it before you're doing that. So the journaling is an incredible part of that. And I think that what happens is, especially when you start your protocol and you set your intentions, right? When I work with people, when we start, I say, okay, close your eyes. Okay, we're going to work for 6 weeks, right? What does that you look like 6 weeks from now? What do they look like? What is it that you want them to look like, right? And then we're going to start to behave like them. We're going to start to think like them. We're going to start to feel like them. But what are your intentions to get there, right? And as you go on your road and you're integrating, okay, how do I get there? How do I get to that person that I saw, that I want to be like, that I want to sort of be the happiest version of myself? And that's where the integration really comes in. It's how do I use what the microdosing is helping me to see clearer
Mm.
to get to where I hopefully envision that I can be.
How do I start to live out that image that I
Yeah.
hold?
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
And Caesar, why psilocybin for you? So you mentioned that there are quite a few different substances that people microdose with. Tell us a little bit about how you landed on psilocybin.
The mushrooms came to me. The
Yeah.
mushrooms literally, yeah, it's a funny story. And the mushrooms have become my medicine. I've had experiences with other medicines, but there's something about the relationship that I've created with the mushrooms, the journeys that I've had, and the experiences during those journeys with the mushrooms on bigger journeys, that I really feel that there's something that's why they're like everywhere, right? It's it's one of these situations, and again, they were the first ones to come to me. This person having the experience with the psilocybin. Then a couple of weeks later, on a bicycle ride in Atlanta, someone who was riding next to me, I said he had this huge smile, and I'm like, "Are you okay?" And they're like, "I just had some mushrooms, and I feel like I'm a child riding a bike for the first time." And it was fun because it was that same person who I later say, hey, so where can I get these mushrooms? And they go to me, these bikes don't pay for themselves. So the mushrooms not only bring me this person to talk to me about it, but they also bring me the safe source to the mushrooms. It wasn't like I had to go on the internet or something. So for that reason, I have a sense that the mushrooms, they were saying, hey, here we are. And I think the other thing with psilocybin, um, is it's the entry point of psilocybin is a lot less scarier to a lot of people than, let's say, LSD. then let's say mescaline, then let's say there's something about, hey, this came from the earth, like this grows, right there. There's some natural nature part of it that is really calling to me. And that's why again, I have a really wonderful relationship with psilocybin. I grow my own, mushrooms here thanks to, a wonderful partner that we have. So I play music for them and I talk to them. So there's this wonderful relationship that I have with them. That being said, I have microdosed LSD and it's a completely different experience, but the relationship is not almost as profound as it is with the mushrooms, right? Like I can't play music for the LSD. I can't talk. I don't see the LSD grow and
Yeah.
and see it. You know what I mean? So it's definitely a different relationship, and that's why to me the psilocybin is so close to my heart.
And you really are cultivating wisdom by growing them and having that experience, kind of nurturing them.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because that's where the name for the mission came from, right? It was these mushrooms, they cultivate wisdom in us. That's what they do when they're used intentionally, right? When they're used in the right when they're used in the right setting, they can really, really produce some profound wisdom in the human mind, right? And it's beautiful. It's amazing. And I think the more we have these conversations, right? Like I said, we're not some tie dye. We don't look like we're going to some rave or some, we're professionals. We're mothers, we're fathers, we're husbands, we're daughters, we're butchers, we're the guy at Starbucks, we're entrepreneurs, we're lawyers, we're therapists who are using these medicines responsibly. And when we share these stories, right, I think that we can build these bridges, right? We could build these bridges of information, which I think is the most important part of what we're doing right now. And again, like I said, hats off to you. Hats off to you to sort of, bring this conversation to light, um, and bring people, these honest, open, and objective information about psychedelics.
Mm. And what are you finding that people's common reasons for microdosing are? So the people that are coming to you that are the wanting your assistance through the 6 week program, is it therapeutically? Is it about wanting creativity? Is it something else? I mean, what do you think people's
It's
motivation?
sort of, especially the people I work with who are people over 50, once you get past 50, there's this sense of at least half of life is over. Because even at 40, Claire, you say, you know what, I can make 80. I can make 80, right? I mean, my mom's 80, she's thriving. She's still, she's still going and getting it. But at 50, there's a realization that I'm not going to make 100. I don't even know if I want to make 100. So what's left? Is it two? Is it 12? Is it 22? And what does that mean? And for many over 50, for the large majority over 50, what it means to them is that it's over, or it's close to over, or it's almost over. When the reality is every day is a new beginning. Like
Mm,
every day is a new way to start. So a lot of people that come to me is this sense of I just I'm stuck, right? And we get over 50 and this on age set depression comes on, right? And this sense of, my kids are grown and they're not here anymore. And what do I have? And this sense of, I've worked all this time to get all these things. And at the end of the day, what do I have? So there's
mm,
this sense of lack of clarity. There's a lot of depression, right? There's a lot of depression. It's all these thoughts again. We talked about it earlier. It's all these thoughts about the past and the future.
mm,
And many of the people that I talk to, many of the people that I work with, that's where their monkey brains live. They live in that past or they live in that anxiety of the future. And once you get them to sort of, okay, let's take some deep breaths, right? Let's be mindful, let's be present, and it's through little tools, right? So the people I work with, I'd love for people who are listening, if maybe they can do this, because this is a really wonderful exercise to have, to really be present. And I call it waking up 4 times a day. So you set on your phone, you set 4 alarms, right? You set an alarm at 11:11, and at 11:11 you stop and you take 11 deep breaths. Okay? You just, re-regulate yourself at 11:11. At 1:11 the alarm goes off and I find someone in my contact list and I send them a voicemail, not a text message, so they can hear the sincerity in my voice, me telling them, hey, I was thinking about you. I hope you're having an amazing day. That's all you do. You send them that. Then at 3:33, the alarm goes off. You take 3 minutes to just movement, to just move around, to just shake it, to walk around the house, to walk up the stairs, to just, we're sitting at our desks all day. We're just whatever. Take 3 minutes of movement. And then at 5:55, the alarm goes off and I take 5 minutes to reflect on the day. Has today been a good day? Have I been as productive as I needed to be? Could I have been done things better? Hey, I said I was going to call my mom. I better call my mom. I just think that if we do, and it's like I tell people, Claire, you don't have to be perfect. I know that there's going to be moments where you're going to be like this, or you're going to want to kill your kids, or you want to kill your partner, or you just want to just blow up the world, and the alarm's going to go off, and you're going to take the phone, and you want to throw it. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. It's fine. Just be consistent. Don't be perfect. Be consistent, right? Because look at it. If that alarm goes off 7 times a week, and of those seven, 5 times you send out a little voicemail, right? And of those five, two people are touched by that and they reach back out to you and they're like, Claire, oh my God, I haven't talked to you in ages. I've been meaning to talk to you. Or someone says, you know what? I really needed that today. Like I needed that.
I love that idea. I will be doing
Yeah.
it tomorrow.
Well,
And
good.
there's a really special. I've got a friend as well. We have this thing about 11:11 that we always seem to notice 11:11, and the 11, the one is a very
Yeah.
significant number, right? So I love the
Yeah.
fact that you're using that again to kind of tap into the energy of the numbers and send messages and just reconnect to oneself. It's so powerful.
And it's even important too, to have that connectivity to the ones that are really close to us, right? Sometimes like this could be used for a lot of bad, but it can also be used for some good, right? So in the alarms also, I have alarms set for my kids, right? Let me be present for my kids at least once a day, right? To say, hey, thinking about you, or hey, here's a little smiley sticker, or hey, here's whatever. So it's we get lost sometimes, and it's that connectivity, that human connectivity. And that's why, look, I always tell people, and that's like we said, the mushrooms have been an incredible part of my life the last 2 years. And I've realized that, Claire, we're all mushrooms. Like every single human is a mushroom. And we have the potential to create mycelial networks and mycelial connections with these other mushrooms and decide how strong we can make them. And when we do that, it's amazing. It's amazing what we can do. I was yesterday at a meeting of the Atlanta Psychedelic Association, and just the amount of love, the amount of caring, the amount of just empathy for people without having this thing in our hands, right?
Hmm.
It's
Mm,
beautiful. I think it's wonderful.
mm. Absolutely. Yeah, you just reminded me this morning. I was due to go swimming and I got into the changing room. I was half ready and I thought, this doesn't feel right. I don't want to be here right now. And I'm not shy of getting in the water on a very cold English day. But I felt like I needed just to be somewhere else. And I got out and into the where I live, there's a beautiful common and woodland, and just to be in that space and to see the light coming through and be so touched by the beauty of our existence. And then I met a couple of people, had a gorgeous conversations, and I just knew that when I left that pool, there's a reason why I needed to be somewhere else and really connect to that love and just to be in nature. It's really awesome when we can start to listen to those voices within us and be
Mm,
pulled by
mm,
that need for connection or that need to be in that loving space.
mm. And we have to listen too, right? It's that sense of, but we also have to look for it, right? We're sometimes so shied away from, not looking up and maybe smiling at people for whatever reason. And I get it. What I mean, we live in a sort of, we live in this world, but there is this sense of, like I said, sometimes one of my intentions during the week is to go into the supermarket and just say good morning to everybody. Just intentionally say good morning to people, because you don't know who might need that, right? You don't know, who that might change. Yes, you might get someone to go, yeah, you know what? Go F
Mm,
yourself.
mm,
On
mm.
a horrible day. Go mind your own business. You know what I mean? And that's okay. Okay, I'm gonna go out do that. And you go.
And it takes a lot of practice to listen because, of course, I'm half there thinking, "Come on, you're here. You've got your towel. You're nearly in the water. Get on with it. You could do with the exercise. You need to do this. You need to do that." But actually, the kind of not listening to the monkey mind and all of the things that it thinks it needs to achieve, and actually be driven by the heart, is a really different experience. And it's scary, right? Because you're not gonna complete your to-do list, and you're not gonna be as productive in inverted commas as you may have been otherwise. But
Yeah.
like you say, you lead from a different place, and the people around you are gonna have a much better experience of you.
Mm, mm. So think about, those people that you talk to today, and you touch them in any way, just because having that conversation, having that human connection. Yes, the pool would have been awesome. Yes, the pool would have been a great thing to get on the to-do list because I got my exercise out of the way. But maybe that human connection wouldn't have been there tomorrow, right? It was there today. It needed to happen today. The universe said, Claire, no, we'll swim another day. Today, you need to go connect to people and have people smile. And when things like that happen, it's beautiful because, and especially when you're in touch with it, right? Because I'm sure there'd be people that would have that same situation as yourself, and then would go home and be like, oh, I didn't go swimming, oh, whatever. And now, so what?
Mhm.
I tell people, look, there's enough people wanting to beat you up. Don't be the one
Don't
that's
be,
beating yourself up.
don't
Exactly.
don't add to it. I was thinking maybe
Yeah.
you could tell listeners a little bit about the difference of the impact on the brain between microdosing and a macro dose.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
let's just talk a little bit about the science as it's the new
Mm,
religion.
mm. Perfect. Like we said, microdosing, very subperceptual, right? You're not, again, neural pathways are going to be firing off. There's going to be new connections in the brain. There's this great sort of correlation to, the brain lives in this default mode network, right? We're always programmed to sort of think and act in a certain way, and sort of these slopes that are the same. And when we microdose, we start to lay down, new fresh snow, and maybe find different ways that we can navigate. So that subperceptual, I'm still able to function. Things aren't moving, things aren't changing colors. That is that baseline for microdosing, right? Then people could move on to what they call a museum dose, right? A recreational dose, some people might call it, sort of in that 1 gram to 2 grams area where people might realm. That's more sense of, for most people, auditory, sensory perceptions are going off a little bit harder. Yes, something's going on. And then obviously a bigger dose, a macro dose, let's say anywhere 3 grams and above. For most people, what that does is it opens up these really, really neural pathways of the conscious mind that aren't open when you're not on the psilocybin, right? These medicines have been used for millennia for people to really tap into that conscious being. Everyone's experience is incredibly different, and again, depending on setting is going to change. So what I tell people, again, educate yourself about what a macrodose is, and also, more importantly, what are your intentions, right? If your intentions are you going in just to, I don't have any intentions, well then that can be a situation, that could be a problem. All psychedelics, what they are, it's psychedelic means mind expanding, right?
Mm,
We're expanding the mind. The molecules are really expanding those brain cells that maybe are dormant, right? That sort of
mm,
sense of, just this is from a personal experience. My first big macro journey, one of my intentions was to tap into things that held me back, things, limiting beliefs that I had in myself, and where did they come from? Like, what was that? And in my journey, I was returned to childhood situations where that is where that blockage was coming from, right? Situations of fear of failure as a child, right? The consequences that would come from that. And it took me, to this past memories, right? This maybe closed off chapter in my life, or this closed off closet in my life that was holding me back, that maybe if I opened it up and I addressed it and I realized where it came from and I realized why that happened, in that period in my life. You know what I mean? And maybe what, the lessons that could have come from that maybe before I wasn't seeing, that was only due to a macro journey, right? That openness happened because of that macro journey. So it definitely, from my experience and from everything I've read, macro journeys have that real potential to open up that true consciousness of what maybe the brain or we have closed off or shut off to, right? um because everyone's experience is totally different, and
Mm,
it's
mm,
and that's why, and everyone's experience with every single substance can be different, right? So it's I think intentionality is incredibly important. A bigger proponent of obviously the therapeutic use of plant medicine, of psychedelics. That doesn't mean that I'm against the recreational use of psychedelics. I think that as human beings, we should have the potential ability to open up our own consciousness. I just tell people, you have to be you have to be mindful, right? Psychedelics are not for everybody. They're
mm,
not.
mm.
Mm-mm. They're
And
not
maybe,
for
yeah,
everybody.
maybe now's a good time to talk about kind of
Yeah,
risks.
important,
Yeah.
super important, because risk reduction is really important in and risk reduction number one comes from education. Education is our biggest tool, our biggest power to harm reduction, because then we can realize, is this for me, is this not for me? And part of that education also includes talking to your therapist, talking to your doctor, talking to your practitioner about what you're intending to do, right? It's this is that's really important. That harm reduction is really important. So to avoid or mitigate the risks, it's about educating ourselves first, right? Really knowing, and education through talking to our specialists, right? Who are in our lives, who are right now taking care of our health, right? And educating ourselves in the sense of there's a lot of information out there. There's tons of good studies that are being done. There's really good books that are being written. So that's the first part. Mitigating the risk is really important. Now, risks. What are the risks possible? With microdosing, I would say people who maybe have bipolar issues, again, with something that's going to open up or tap into different neuroconscious pathways. If there's that bipolar situation, are we going to sort of go one way or another? So from what I've read, and again, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a scientist, I only go on what I've read in my own personal experience. I've read that for people who suffer from bipolar, this isn't it's not a good idea. And risks, like anything, no, if you're using this incorrectly, right? Risk in the sense of, hey, let me take one microdose. Hey, I'm not feeling anything. Let me take another one. Hey, I'm not feeling anything. Let me take another one. Oh, wait a minute. That wasn't a microdose,
Mm,
right? So
mm,
that's risks in that sense. Risk for microdosing in the sense of, you know, um, I'm gonna crash the car, or I'm gonna, be impaired. I tell people, when you start to microdose the first time, do it at home, do it on a day that you don't have a lot to do, where you can sort of get a sense of what this is going to do to you, how are you going to feel. But I've never had an experience with people I've worked with or myself where there's been risk of someone having an altered experience through
mhm,
microdosing and having an accident or something like that. Obviously, with macrodoses, there's tons of risks, especially if you're by yourself, right? Especially if it's, an uneducated journey, an unintentional journey. There's a lot of risks in that realm, right? So it's again, lack of education, I think, is the biggest risk, because someone could say, oh, I heard, if I eat mushrooms, I'm going to cure my depression. What does that mean? Eat some mushrooms. Well, how much are you going to eat? I don't know, just got a bag and I'm going to eat them. Well, what are your intentions? Well, I don't have any. Those are risks, right? I think the biggest risks that we run is the lack of education.
mhm,
And that's why podcasts like this are incredibly important. Like incredibly important. They're paramount, literally paramount to the success of psychedelic medicine, of plant medicine, you know, being used correctly. It's
mm,
really
mhm.
important. So.
And tell me, you mentioned your macro journey. How do you sit macro journeys alongside your microdosing, or did that happen at a different time? I'm just thinking about people that maybe have booked a couple of ceremonies and want to microdose in between. Tell us about gaps and spacing, and
Hmm.
maybe you could educate people a little bit about that.
Yeah, I love that's another brilliant and wonderful question. Um, and I start with my experience, right? With how I sort of navigate this realm. The same way that I feel that the mushrooms came to me, right? They called for me. I didn't look for them, they came to me. I also am very intuitive in listening to when I have a sense that, you know what, maybe it's time for me to have a little reset. Maybe it's time for me to sit again, with a bigger journey with the medicine. Most people who psychedelics have become a big part of their lives, they'll look at having macro journeys 2, maybe 3 times a year. I think anything more than that, I think we're sort of pushing that limit. I've had the last of my first year that psilocybin was in my life. I had 3 journeys. This year, I've only had 2, which were perfect, and they were when the medicine was like, okay, I think we're ready to have. So intuitively, listen to the medicine. You'll hear a lot of people in the space say, you know what, I mean, the medicine told me, I heard the medicine, I was listening, I had a calling. So that's really important. And with the microdosing, it's important to make sure that you do take breaks, right? You talked about, in between, what do you do? The microdosing, it's not something that you want to consistently do. You want to take breaks, whether it's that break inside that protocol, you know, 4 days on, 3 days off, or that 1 day on, 2 days off. Make sure you have that time off. But I tell people, don't microdose more than 6 weeks at a time, 4 to 6 weeks at a time maximum, and then take a good 3 weeks to a month off, a good break to create some threshold. There's a lot of people who start to microdose, and this was my case. I did have, again, my first experience, my first awakening. I don't consider that my first real sitting with the medicine, because it was more like I was looking for a recreational high. It wasn't an intentional sitting with psilocybin. So for me, I started to microdose, and then during my microdosing, my first 2 weeks was when the medicine was, okay, you're ready to have a big sitting. You're ready to have a big journey, with psilocybin. And it was actually my 55th birthday. It was 2 years ago. And I tell people, Claire, the podium of my life, the birth of my 3 kids, without a doubt. Number one, that's top. Number two, meeting the love of my life after the age of 50. And number three, that day, that day, because it was an incredibly profound day with a lot of messages, a lot of really seeing who I am, what path I need to take. So that was an incredible experience. So for me, it was microdose and then macrodose. There's people who obviously get to a point where therapeutically someone says, well, you need to have a big experience, or they go and they have ketamine therapy, and then afterwards they're like, okay, well then how can I maybe continue to harness that afterglow? And
Hmm.
sometimes it's through microdosing. For some people, it's through microdosing. So there are people who start to microdose and then macrodose, and there's people who have a first macrodose and then find that microdosing helped them to continue to have that afterglow.
And the importance being the gaps between so that you can really integrate what comes up.
Very important.
And even if you're just on a microdosing protocol, ensure that there are gaps of 3 weeks a month between every kind of 6 weeks.
Hmm. Yeah, super important, Claire, that you clarified that, because yeah, it's important. It's important whether it's a big journey and you have a gap between that next big journey, or whether you're microdosing and you have those gaps in between those days that you're microdosing, or that gap in between your protocols. So yeah, it really important, really
Mm.
important.
What would you say, with the work that you're doing? What are some of the misconceptions that you come across? When people see your t-shirts and start conversations with you, are there any kind of common misconceptions?
The common misconception obviously is the you're on drugs.
Mm.
That's the common. I think that now there's a lot more curiosity, but there is definitely, yeah, this is still illegal. You're still doing drugs. And it goes back to the point where I say, Claire, look, I'm going to talk to 5 people, right? 2 of them are going to say druggy, illegal, you're going to go to jail, that makes people crazy, you're not my friend anymore, you're doing stuff that's bad. Two people are going to say, excuse me, what did you say? What did you wait? What that microdosing thing? What is that about? You poked at my curiosity. I'm going to do some research. You're going to have
Mm.
that one person that's going to go like, wait a minute, what? You're telling me that you were able to overcome your cannabis dependency through microdosing? Yes. Okay, come on. Teach me more. Let me know. I want to start this.
Yeah, maybe you could tell us more about that because that's such an important piece. How did that come about or what did that look like for you?
Before the relationship with cannabis was really bad. Like it was 24/7. It was get up, get high, go to work, get high, at work, get high. It was just it was this ongoing cycle where the cannabis had control of me. I didn't have control of it. Addiction, right? It's addiction. Addiction is a quick burst of dopamine that at the end of the day is unmanageable. It's unsustainable, right? But you got to go back to it somehow. Um, and through reading on how microdosing can potentially, fire those neural pathways of rethinking, right? Of thinking at this moment, do I of learning about intentions, right? What are my intentions with cannabis? What were my intentions with cannabis? Was there a reason to do it? Could I potentially say, not right now? I could. And the idea for me was, okay, there's this dependency that I have, right? I have two options. I continue going down that road or I try to microdose. But if I'm going to try to microdose, I'm going to hold myself accountable. It's part of the journaling, right? That's part of the, intention setting. My intentions today is I'm not going to smoke cannabis. And when that cannabis comes around, I can say, not right now, right? Because for me, it wasn't like I'm never going to smoke cannabis again. That's that's a long time. And that, from what I've read with people, in different programs, let's say like AA, there's a lot of relapse from people say, I'll never drink again. And they hold on to this number 40, number 48 sober, number 369 sober. And then when for whatever reason something happens, then it's like, then the wheels just completely come off the wagon. So for me, it was like, you know what? Every day the intention is I don't need cannabis. And if ever it's there, I can say, hey, not right now. Do you have intentions to? No, then not right now. Hey, you know what? Whatever. Friends are over. We had a dinner. Someone, had a little cannabis. There might be intentions to just chill because we're with my friends. I want to laugh. We'll see when that happens. But right
Mm.
now, I don't have any intentions to. So it's that mindful clarity that microdosing gave me, right? That sense of now, right? We talked about it earlier. And Eckhart Tolle's book, it's the power of now. I mean, it's so powerful. Just that term right now, the power of now. So microdosing gave me that power of now to be able to say, you know what? I got to change this relationship that I have with cannabis. And you want to hear a wonderful story, Claire? This pendant right here that I have,
Yeah.
when microdosing and psilocybin comes into my life, I call my mother and I go, Mom, you know that cannabis dependency that I deal with? She goes, I'm your effing mother. Of course I do. I went, well, Mom, get this. I'm going to start to use psychedelics to overcome my cannabis dependency. And she went, are you crazy? Like, have you lost your mind? Like, seriously, Cesar Marin. Like, have you seen how old you are? Like, have you seen you have three grown kids? What are you gonna tell them? Like, she literally said, she goes, have you smoked that much weed that you think that that's the solution? And I said, Mom, look, I'm a journalist. I worked at CNN for 25 years. I've done my homework, right? And I have two options. Or either try this or I continue to smoke weed like I'm joining a reggae band. So 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 I said, Mom, I'm gonna try this. And she said, whatever. I'm done with you. I don't even want to talk to you anymore. Ever. And I went, okay, Mom. A month later, and she says, wait a minute. This dude started his own business. He's talking differently. He got laid off and he's living his best life. She's in Colombia and she sees this pendant and she buys it for me. And when she hands it to me, she says, I'm so proud of what you're doing. So I tell people,
Wow.
Claire, my parents are proud of the fact that I use psychedelics. If that's not an endorsement, what is? My
Oh, that's so
80-year-old mother approves of the fact that I use psychedelics.
incredible. I love that story. What advice would you give to someone that's kind of new to this, that's wanting to start microdosing, that doesn't, just doesn't really know where to go, where to start? And you mentioned the legal status that we face all over the UK. I know in certain states in the US it's different.
Here's what I say. One, download my book. Download my book. Download the free ebook. Just so there's good inform yourself.
Mm,
Inform yourself. That's the best way. With mushrooms, right, which is the easiest sense to microdose because you can literally grow your own, right? Here in the States, there's a couple companies who sell um research kits that you can grow your own medicine. And I tell people the legality of it, yes, is a slippery slope. Don't do anything that's illegal. There's a lot of things that are done in this world that are illegal. Who is someone to tell me that I can't grow my own medicine, that I can't grow something that the earth has given me, right? If I'm going to use it in a healing way. Um, I don't think that you're that important or I'm that important that the cops are going to come knocking on my door saying, hey, I hear you have some mushrooms. That being said, don't do anything that's illegal. But if you can do some research, do some research. Here in the States, there's a gray market, right? There's a gray market, so there's ways to obtain medicine. Definitely do your homework and find your people. Find your
mm,
people, right? The internet's a small world, and find your local psychedelic association. A lot of places have them, have people who meet and have these wonderful conversations. Look, we meet here in Atlanta once a week. It's a wonderful community, and we come together and we share stories, and we put our phones down, and it doesn't matter what political party you're affiliated to. It doesn't matter if you're pro-gun or anti-gun. It doesn't matter if you're, obviously abortion is a big topic here in the States. It doesn't matter if you're pro-life or, pro-choice. It's just you're a human being, right? So find your humans. My
mm.
suggestion is if this interests you, find your local, humans, right? Educate yourself. If you can, do your research on your own medicine, for sure. That's the best way. Again, you have a relationship with it, right? I talked about it earlier. I I play music for my mushrooms. You know what I mean? I have a relationship with them. If you can do that, that's that's a good relationship and a good way to get into microdosing. Now, again, that being said, Claire, I realize we live in a world where we're just like, wow, we're 100 miles an hour. And Caesar, are you serious? I don't have time to sort of sit there and see some mushrooms and play music for my mushrooms. And sort of, well, then, if that's the world you're living in, then maybe you really need to microdose and slow down a little bit and take that deep breath and, you know, play some music. It's sort of, yeah. The other advice, of course, Claire, is just, yeah, let's take a couple deep breaths once in a while, right? Let's realize that today is the best day of our life. Today, today, for all of us, for all of us, the best day of our life is today. And when we do that, I think we can really find a way to make ourselves better and the people around us better. So educate yourself. Yeah, definitely microdosing has helped me. It's helped a lot of people. It's shown me a different path. It's my life performance enhancer.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's yeah, it's changing a lot of people, but definitely do some education on yourself. Yeah, definitely do some homework. Definitely listen to some more podcasts, talk to other people.
And Cesar, where can people find you if they want to download this, your free guide,
Yeah, awesome.
and
Thank you.
buy a
Thank you, Claire, for
t-shirt?
letting me share. Yeah, so definitely. So microdosingover50.com is the place for people to get, like I said, honest, open, and objective information about microdosing. There's a couple courses that I have on there. I have a small little class on how to reinvent your life at any age, right? I had to reinvent my life at 55. For many people, 55 is like it's almost over. For me, it was like, no, wait a minute. And you can reinvent your life at any age. It's just you have to believe in yourself, and there's these little tools that you can use, and microdosing was one of these tools for me. But I want to empower people to really believe that they can, reinvent themselves at any age. So there's a course on that. There's a great course on how to use microdosing to enhance your creativity and your cognitive skills after 50. There's also a course that's in pre-sale that's an A to Z on microdosing, from what is microdosing to intentions, to how to grow your own medicine, to, some of the things that over 50 we deal with. And then we are putting together a couple of retreats next year in Mexico, go and empty out their cups. So, Microdosing Over 50 is a really good resource to get some good information. And then for the apparel brand, cultivatingwisdom.net. Again, the idea is, for people to be able to manifest the fact that we're using these substances responsibly, right? That we're using them ethically, that we're using them in a right way. That again, like I said, it's moms, dads, it's entrepreneurs, lawyers, that we're normal people, so that we can start these conversations. And then on Instagram, it's cultivating.wisdom. That's just me being me and sharing, some of my daily stuff, and people I come across, and studies I come across, and just different things. Definitely the microdosing over 50 is the best place to find me. And, I'm on all that other stuff, obviously YouTube and TikTok and, everything else. So now that we have to be, but what's really cool, Claire, that nowadays, I started working in CNN, when to get your message out there, right? So in other words, 25 years ago, if I wanted to talk about microdosing, I literally needed a studio, and I needed cameras, and I needed a control room, and I needed a satellite, and I needed to buy some airtime so I can get my message out there. Nowadays, we're all the media, right? So we can all have these stories, and it's one of the reasons why I'm a big proponent of, if psychedelics have changed your life, share your story of change, right? Because it can change a lot of people's minds. And the other thing it can do is, legacy media, right? Normal media, CNN, BBC, New York Times, they're just waiting, they're just salivating for a negative psychedelic story, because that's what they want. I worked there long enough to know that, hey, pilot takes shrooms, tries to down plane, is a massive headline. So what we need to do is share our stories of change, so that maybe it resonates with somebody. Maybe an editor says, hey, wait, look at that story of that veteran that, like, he was ready to take his own life, and now, he had this experience, and now he's got his own clinic. Look at this therapist who has turned her practice around completely, and is now using, psychedelic therapy to help couples. There's just so many wonderful, beautiful stories that if we don't share them, no one is going to know. The media's not going to know. They're just waiting for these other stories. So, like I said, there's many beautiful stories. There's many beautiful stories that have come through transformation. Thank you to psychedelics. So, if you can share your story, share your story. You don't know who you're going to touch. You don't know who is going to say, "Oh my God, he, she, they're just like I am,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
changed their lives. I want that."
yeah. Oh, Caesar, thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I think I need to get myself one of your t-shirts.
So let's do this, Claire. I'm going to put a promo code Couch20,
Yeah,
so that your followers and your listeners can get a 20% discount, right, at the
amazing.
store. And yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Awesome. Awesome. People who listen to the Psychedelic Couch for Life will have a 20% discount at the store.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Awesome.
Caesar.
Claire, like I say, look, every day is the best day of my life. Thank you for being part of the best day of my life.
Oh,
Um, thank you, like I said, for having these conversations. Thank you. It's so important, that we do have these honest conversations, and that we show that we're normal people, right?
yeah,
That we're
exactly. Exactly.
Thank you so much for opening up your podcast to letting me share my story. That was a great way to start the day. And what a pleasure, Claire. What
Oh,
a
thank
serious,
you.
wonderful, wonderful pleasure meeting you. You're a good mushroom.
Thank you, as are you. Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
love. I
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Have a great one.
Yeah,
Thank you,
have a
hon.
great one. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Ciao, ciao. You've been listening to the Psychedelic Couch. For more episodes, please follow me on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts, and find me on Instagram at the Psychedelic Couch and at Clare Faulkner Therapy, where I will be keeping you up to date on the latest episodes and information surrounding all things therapy, psychedelics, and expanded states.